You're listening to a Roddenberry podcast.
Welcome, everyone. Welcome back to Mission Log Engage here on the Roddenberry Entertainment Channel. I am Norman.
And I'm John, and here we are with more of your Q's and plenty of our A's.
Ooh,
yes.
Do tell.
That's what we do.
We have a lot of A's for you.
Yeah.
A lot of A's.
So many. And if we don't, we'll make them up.
That's right. We can make up our own A's.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So the beauty of this is that you email us and you comment on what we do, and then we get to have a conversation about it and kind of bring in what I've been trying to do, and particularly with an email like this one, which is a little bit longer, but in a great way. I got back to the author of this email and I said, hey, there's so much good stuff here. I really want to put it in Engage. So we kind of held off for a little while, and now we get to share it with each other and with the audience and then chat about it.
Fantastic. What do we have for us today?
All right. We have an email from Pedro. Who I haven't seen in the live chat on the live show in a while, but Pedro, yeah, I know, but glad to hear from you, Pedro. So, hey, John and Norman, Pedro here. Yes, it is. I've finally overtaken Mission Log after listening to everything and moving on to Voyager. Mission Log is one of my favorite shows, definitely my favorite Star Trek podcast. I love the others in the network. I just really dig this one. And it has become a staple of any moments in which I can afford to not be in total silence. First of all, thank you. That is awesome. I want to tell the story of how Norman did an inception on me that I haven't been able to let go of for months now. It was, I guess, over a year ago when you were talking about Jadzia's place with the Klingon TOS trio. Norman made a correct, witty remark about Jadzia killing the albino, quote, in the name of cultural appropriation. At the time, I thought nothing more of it than a simple, I guess this is a way you can describe that. Never thought of it that way. Interesting. Then, over the course of several months, I started thinking about how Star Trek actually uses culture and how it portrays someone outside of any alien culture interacting with anyone inside of it. As far as the Klingons are concerned, since TOS didn't really care about Klingon culture that much, we explore that a lot when Picard gets involved with Worf's family affairs or during Jadzia's tenure in DS9 and eventual marriage with Worf. But, and I realize you haven't gotten there yet, it was when I got to Voyager that it became a problem, because I realized culture in Star Trek is many times shorthand for an easy mode of character development, and sometimes it's just an excuse to make characters act weird for the episode regardless of their previously established individuality. That gets really uncomfortable when people start dating the crew members who are part of their, quote, favorite culture. It gets especially uncomfortable in some scenes that you haven't reached yet when our heroes start explaining to their Klingon peers why exactly Klingon culture is so rad and what's so fun about it. For the parts of Trek you've gone through, I'd argue it reaches screeching, oh God, stop levels of weirdness when Ezri Dax correctly points out to Worf that his entire culture is stupid and that he should listen to her when she says that the Klingon ways deserve to perish. In my eyes, the Klingons are only saved and save the galaxy when a foreigner tells them to be less Klingon, and that's just awkward, I suppose, is a word for it. Suffice to say, I dealt with these thoughts in the most adult-controlled, not at all indicative of compulsive behavior way I knew how, a maddening, rambling, embarrassingly long article, and by the way, I will link to that article in the show notes here. I wanted to ask, by DS9, what do you guys think of the use of culture in Star Trek as social commentary, combined with the propensity characters have to use culture to further their agendas? And then parenthetical here, Worf, I will now control you through my description of what is honorable and what is not, and / it's called freedom, you'll love it. Or about appropriation of alien cultural symbols that sometimes gets way too close to how those actually go in real life, but is not really pushed against. As far as we've seen so far, I'd kind of argue for Sisko's tenure as the emissary to be an example of someone using an alien culture to enhance their own position and status, seemingly to no pushback from the culture itself. Do you have any opinions about moments that hit differently when dealing with alien cultures through the lenses of today from any of the shows we've seen so far? Thanks for reading. Sorry for the ramble. No problem, Pedro. And I can't wait to have someone in my routine who knows what the hell a Talaxian is. All right, that is a big email, but I really just wanted to share it as it is. So, Pedro, thank you for writing that and for letting us share your essay as well. Norm, that's a lot to chew on. And I
Sure.
kind of feel like we need experts in cultural, social issues with us.
Anthropologists.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I mean, for 2/3 of Pedro's, expertly and articulately written email here, that's about describing his understanding of the cultural appropriation and how it's being explained through Star Trek lenses. But it's the final third of this where I think we can probably be a little bit more articulate ourselves. What do you guys think the use of culture in Star Trek as social commentary provide, et cetera, et cetera? I mean, we have seen that. We have discussed that at length when it comes to one, religion, especially in Deep Space Nine. The appropriation of religion itself in a way that we see leaders of that religion, say the Kai Opakas of the Bajorans of the world, and then of their world versus the Kai Winds and the appropriation of power, or I should say the misuse of trust. Especially where Kai Wynn is concerned. That doesn't necessarily equate specifically to Catholicism or Christianity. It basically equates to the perversion of power in religion in general. So that's something that it's not necessarily cultural appropriation. It's just the analog of religion and the pitfalls or the promises of what religion can provide its people. That's always been something in Star Trek's vernacular that has been very pervasive, either from in a positive way or negative ways, how they use alien cultures in order to create the analog towards humanity and how humanity is either failing or is trying to dig its way out of certain cultural pitfalls, shortcomings, etc. So I don't really see any one particular cultural appropriation as being an issue in Star Trek because, one, not every single culture in Star Trek is completely 100% well thought through. They are utilitarian in a way. They help tell a certain story at a certain time. And this is what happens in fandom. They do a great job at a very specific episode building the culturalism of an alien species for that episode. And that becomes in and of itself the Bible of how that culture has to move forward. And then people will cry foul saying that, well, that's not how that happened in the very first episode. Thank God, because then we would be stuck with the Ferengi, right? From
last outpost,
for the last outpost or the battle, right? So instead of getting Quark and the Grand Nagus and Rom. So I guess it's a long-winded way of saying that, are there examples of, say, what Dax did, and are there people like me who will make a short quibble about that? Sure. But in the long run, Star Trek tries to do its best using the alien culture du jour for that episode to try and create a point, or to try and drive a narrative point forward. Does it build on itself all the time? No. Do they try to? Yes.
Yeah, I mean, look, it is, and Pedro kind of addressed this a little bit already. It is storytelling, it is TV, so there are certain limits to the medium anyway. And very often, we've pointed this out on Mission Log from the very beginning to say there are shorthand techniques that will always come into play. And some of them will be acceptable and perfectly valid to move a story along, and others will leave us frustrated and wonder what happened, but alien cultures have often served that, because as Star Trek goes on and on and on and on, you have this problem where what served as a great metaphoric storytelling device suddenly becomes, well, okay, now it's an entire alien culture that we have to flesh out. And the Klingons were one thing, and then they had to become something else because there were just that many more stories to tell with that many more Klingon characters. So they aren't always going to be consistent. That's the nature of the beast. By the way, speaking of Klingons, I do want to address something that Pedro said about Ezri Dax's condemnation of Klingons to Worf. To me, there is a very important difference in that, which is that Ezri is saying Klingon politics the Klingon structure is broken, therefore burn it to the ground. She's not condemning the culture, because a culture built around ideas of honor, tradition, etc., that's fine. What she's condemning is using those words when there is no action about those words. When
Accountability.
It comes to their, when it comes to their the structure of their political and social order. So I will absolutely give her a pass there. Now, what'll be interesting is as we go along, and particularly as we just started Voyager, saying cultural appropriation, there isn't a hard line where you can say anything that falls on this side definitely is, and anything that falls on this side definitely is not cultural appropriation. What's interesting in Star Trek is that baked into the DNA of Star Trek is this idea of infinite diversity, which implies that everybody is all the time absorbing bits and pieces of the cultures around them. And it's what happens on the other end. How are you making the best of that? How are you growing because of that? That really is the question of a positive use of that. Will we see questionable or negative uses of that? I'm certain that we will. And it'll be, Voyager's version of that is going to be different than DS9's version of that, just because the context, what it does to those characters, they're almost night and day to that extent. So anyway, Pedro, that is enough of our rambling, because this is such a deep and complex topic, and I really hope that you will continue with us and continue to maybe point out these things as they come along, because this is clearly an ongoing conversation.
And if you would like to extend the conversation, you can do so in the comments below. So make sure that you like, share, and subscribe here to the Roddenberry Entertainment channel, especially specifically us here on Mission Log Engage. You can send us your comments always at missionlog@roddenberry.com. You can find us on Facebook and Twitter at Mission Log Pod. And remember, just like Pedro's email, we may engage with your comments on the air.